people who made major contributions in the advancement and the evolution of humanity and society and cultures and communities sometimes were not the most liked individuals. Though they may have been very well respected, when you hear about some of their stories behind the scenes from people who knew them or individuals who had closer proximity or relationships with them, they often describe their likability, and it wasn't very high. And I think about modern day high achieving women where there is this deep, insatiable need to make a contribution to the world in whatever endeavor that looks like. And we have this deep, deep fear of not fulfilling our fullest potential in our lifetimes, while simultaneously many modern day high achieving women have good girl syndrome, where they have been conditioned to be likable, to be in a box, or to conform, or to follow the rules and stay in line and don't rock the boat and don't disrupt status quo. However, in order to make major contributions to humanity and to be one of the main contributors in the evolution of society and our cultures and our communities, that requires us to rock the boat. That requires us to disrupt status quo. That requires us to break the rules. That requires us to be disliked. And I believe that's the interesting conundrum with this phenomena of modern day high achieving women who came onto this planet ambitious and driven and having qualities of a visionary. And you can trace it back all the way probably before you were even of grade school age of being ambitious. You know, I remember...
There's an object on road ahead.
I'm driving, so there's GPS signaling, but I remember my mother sharing with me that I was walking by the time I was 8 months old, how that ambition was in me from the time I was in my mother's womb. And, you know, there's scripture in Jeremiah where God is speaking to Jeremiah and saying, I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. And I think about us, where we had an identity before we even came into this planet, and then we get conditioned and we get programmed out of our original nature, out of who we truly are. And the game of life is returning to our original nature. The game of life is unlearning, deconditioning from the programs and the paradigms and the patterns that have caused us to disconnect from parts of ourselves that are true to who we really are, so that we can unlock our fullest potential and our power and co-create the transformation we were destined to on this planet. Even those of us who have callings for disrupting status quo, or having major contributions to humanity, or making changes to society, or evolving communities and cultures, it requires us to have the courage to be disliked. It requires us to have the courage to be misunderstood. It requires us to have the courage to not nail it every time, to be imperfect. There will be times where we will experience that messy middle, where it will be messy. It'll be messy when we're repairing relationships and we're resolving conflict and we're learning new ways to navigate with conflict with our beloveds. It will be messy when we are up-leveling our standards, are elevating our standards and establishing new boundaries. It will be messy when we are deciding to raise the heights of our feminine leadership and create greater impact in the world. It will be messy. And I find a lot of modern day high achievers are trapped in the good girl syndrome, and it causes them to have this fear of being perceived as incredible, as not credible, incredible, as being perceived as imperfect, as being perceived as unqualified, ill-equipped, and that causes perfectionism patterns and procrastination and self-punishment, and really not truly having the courage to mess up and just let it be messy. Let it be messy. Let this process of self-actualization be messy, because essentially that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about self-actualization. We are talking about actualizing in our identity and becoming who we are destined to be. And for many of us, that includes this unlocking of power and potential that supports us to make those contributions to humanity and to be paradigm shifters and blueprint builders and legacy creators, and to create new ways of being, rules in different industries. I mean, there's so many different avenues and pathways that we could explore and converse about this, but I believe that the main point here is having the courage to let things be messy, having the courage to be disliked, having the courage to not always get it right. As long as you're continuing on your path and moving forward, as long as you're continuing to follow that inner guidance and compass, that inner voice within, the voice of God that speaks to us and guides us and tells us turn left, turn right, even when everybody else is going in the opposite direction. Being brave to move in the direction we are being led and guided to, not necessarily in the direction that the masses are going into. You know, I have gotten to a point in my own journey where I started to consciously decide that I was not going to go in the same direction as the masses. When the masses were turning left, I was going to turn right. And not always as an act of rebellion, although I do have an inner rebel, and sometimes our inner rebel can get us in trouble. However, out of a place of alignment. And I've had to challenge myself and that inner good girl syndrome to not feel pressured to cave in to what everybody else says you ought to do or you should do, and shitting on myself. And if I'm truly, genuinely, authentically being called to go right when everybody else is going left, to have the courage to do that. You know, I remember when I was a young single mom, got pregnant with my son at 19 years old, and was often told by peers and relatives that I was going to have a very difficult time in my love life because I was a single mom, and I was continuing to up-level my standards after having relationships that were not the healthiest, and was realizing, nope, that's not it. That's not it. That's not what I want. That's not how I want it to be. I had an interesting experience modeled in front of me by my parents, and so I knew I didn't want what they had, but I didn't necessarily have an example of what I actually did want. So I was figuring this out through the school of hard knocks. I was literally creating a new paradigm, a new blueprint for love. And while everyone around me was getting married in our 20s, you know, I was the maid of honor in not one, not two, but 3 weddings, and being questioned about my choices for not getting married in my 20s, because, you know, back then that was the thing, was you need to get married and build the American dream and have a family. I was pursuing passions. I was pursuing self-discovery. I was pursuing healing. I was pursuing being a better mother. I was pursuing fitness. I was pursuing personal growth and evolution and transformation. And I didn't meet the Mr. my husband until my 30s. And now all of those people who got married are divorced. And I do believe that we are modeling for our boys a new paradigm for healthy relationship and love. And that's just one example about me having the courage to be disliked. I was questioned. I was misunderstood. I was talked about. And now these very people are looking at me for relationship advice. They're looking at me for wanting to know, okay, well, what were you doing when we were talking crap about you? What were you doing when we were judging you? Because now we want to know, because we realized we actually didn't know what we were talking about. That's typically the trailblazer identity. Trailblazer in any capacity. Trailblazer doesn't always have to mean that you're trailblazing in an industry. Sometimes trailblazing means you're trailblazing in your relationships. You're trailblazing in life. You're trailblazing in a lifestyle or a habit. And when we are naturally trailblazers, when we are naturally visionaries, when we are naturally the type of people who create new ways of being, new pathways. We're way showers. People will talk mad crap about us. We will be disliked. We will be misunderstood. They're not going to get it. And then usually those are the very people later on down the line who will circle back and ask us, how did you do it? How did you do it? Because they see your results. They see that the road less traveled, the narrow path that you so boldly and courageously decided to go on actually worked. And I believe that we are in a season right now where modern day high achievers need to remember this aspect of themselves, this true identity of being a trailblazer, of being a blueprint builder, of being a paradigm shifter, of being a legacy creator, of being the one who came here to contribute to the evolution of humans and of mankind and of society and their cultures and their communities. And this requires big courage. Right now, more than ever, people are seeking to be liked, to be validated, to be accepted, to belong. Right now, you need to put all of that in the dang on trash can, and you need to embrace your unique individuality and create community with like-hearted, like-spirited, like-minded people who embrace your weirdness, your uniqueness, your authenticity, who embrace your genius and your brilliance, who embrace your shine, who embrace all of who you are and the aspects of who you are that make you rare and one of a kind, so that you are creating what you came to this planet to create. We do not have time to waste. We do not have time to piddle paddle in self-doubt or unbelief or any of those counterproductive thoughts and emotions. Now is the time to tap into your godly power. Now is the time to tap into your godly authority. Now is the time to tap into who God called and created you to be, and go forth. Go forth and be great. Go forth and be who you were created to be. Be all that you can be. and ascend. And ascend. It's time. It's time. This is the type of community I am looking to create in my own sphere of the world. And for those who feel resonance with me, those who feel this deep, deep inner calling for greatness, for ascension, for self-actualization, for higher, for greater, for better, then I invite you to connect with me in community as we are stepping into this new season that God has already created and predestined for us. It is a marvelous time to be alive in the land of the living. God bless. Take care now.